All right, everyone, we will go ahead and get started. How's everyone doing this afternoon? Welcome to the Countersketch webinar. My name is Bo Valo. I am the Western Territory Sales Director for GymVision. We have a special guest here today. We have Miss Erica Delgado. She is a Countersketch power user. Some of her designs are truly inspiring. I don't even think I could complete them, but Erica, you want to tell everyone hi?
Hi, how you guys doing today?
Well, like I said, we want to welcome you all to the Countersketch webinar. So we do have a special treat today. We're going to kind of get into the story of Erica. Erica is, like I said, a power user from the Houston area. You know, she's been in the jewelry industry for quite some time. So I invite you all to kind of sit back and enjoy. So yeah, this is Erica's beautiful jewelry. So Erica, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you a few questions. Let's get into some of your story.
Not at all. Let's go for it.
All right. So what experience do you have in the jewelry trade?
Well, I started in the jewelry industry. I moved to the US in 96. I come from a family of artists, but my biggest thing growing up was I refused to be the starving artist. So I decided to go into business school, international business for, matter of fact. By my second semester, I had more art classes than I did business classes. And I happened to be very fortunate of being working for somebody that had been in the industry for many years as a babysitter. And she said, hey, I want you to come work for me in the stores. I don't want you to babysit anymore. I want to teach you everything to be about this industry. My family's been living off of it for 35 years. So come on. So early 2000s, I started working for her. And because I was now taking more art classes, normal route for me was to say, hey, I'm going to take a metalsmithing class so that I can communicate better with the jewelers and I can understand whether they're trying to fool me and tell me that something cannot be done or whether they're telling me the truth. And that was the end. By then I was hooked and kept on going and taking more classes and learning more different things about it. And so it's been now, early 2000s. So I'm going to say about almost 30 years now. So I'm very excited because I have seen a lot of changes. I kind of got in right where a lot of the digital stuff started, becoming very popular. And it was kind of great to do that transition. I was trained in the old German, European, handmade everything detail and finalize and finish all pieces by hand. And then now making the switch to digital has become kind of really cool.
Yeah. So to kind of go off script a bit here, do you attribute a lot of your change and success to Countersketch?
I will say that it definitely helped because in our area there was a great shift in clientele. And I would say that yes, the last probably 7 years have made a big difference incorporating digital technology. And I mean, even other things like a laser, Countersketch, all those things have made a big difference. Countersketch in particular because we went from having an average client of 45 to 65-year-old to now having 24 to 40-year-olds. And this is a generation that it's growing up with a screen in their hands. And so having a visual tool other than a pad and a pen to do a sketch, having something that it's their communication level, something that they identify with, has made a significant difference in being able to complete the cells and show them exactly what we mean. I used to be able to render something on a napkin and people could understand what I was talking about, but now everybody's so digital that if you do that, they look at you like you're crazy. What are you trying to show me? I don't know what this means. But having it on a screen, it's exactly what they're used to. So yes, Countersketch has definitely made a big impact.
Wow. Yeah, so we kind of got into the Countersketch products you offer, but can you tell us a little bit about your business, like services you offer and provide?
Yes, we are we're pretty much a full service jewelry store, but we are a very small shop. We only have 1,000 foot. 1,000 square foot shop. That's divided into shop and sales room. So a lot of what we do is custom design. It's more of a boutique environment. I don't have any live bridal pieces, for example. We work mainly custom design just because of the space we have, and because we find that that's the best balance, with the demand that we have here in this area. We do repairs that account for a big, chunk of our time doing repairs and custom design. Not only just bridal, but we do a lot of people come in with pieces that they're from 3 different generations of the family, and they want you to put them all into one ring or one pendant or something like that. So we do a lot of redesign as well.
Yeah, those are quite popular. You kind of talked on the technology changing the jewelry industry, and I can definitely speak to that. Even since I'm a relative newbie to the jewelry industry, right? I've only been around for about 10 years. But even in my lifetime, I have seen the jewelry industry as a whole kind of embrace that technology, and it's actually helped the industry tenfold. I think anyway. So. Okay.
It kind of gapped the communication, with the newer generations. And so it has helped a lot.
Yeah, that's true. I never really thought of it like that, but yeah, it definitely has kind of, put the old and the new together. So, all right. So what tools do you actually use to kind of engage your customers? I know you use CounterSketch, but can you talk a little bit on that?
Yes. So what we did is, because we decided we didn't want to have live product, we went at the same time that we invested on CounterSketch, we decided to incorporate Ever and Ever. Couple of months after, so that way we could use them as a tool. We do not really we don't promote Ever and Ever as a line itself ourselves. We use it more as a tool for design because they are very flexible. They do have the availability to be transformed completely in CounterSketch. We can use bits and pieces of every one, or we can just leave it as it is and just do minor changes. So we thought it was a very flexible product that we could use. We set it up at a little table. They are open to the customer so they can try them on, see what looks great on their hand, what color metal they like, what shape stone they like. And then based on that, then we can grab the styles they like and move on to, we have a little section where we created, my husband calls it the design bar, because we have our CAD computer, and then it's a little bit higher counter with like bar stools, and we have a TV connected to it so that we can kind of show on the screen what we're working on for customers to see. And on this table, we did one more addition a few years later. We added the magnetic ring builder from Staller as well, just because it helped that if I looked on the screen, I said, hey, what if we went a little bit bigger with this stone? And they were like, well, I don't know what it looks like. So having the ring builder right there, they could see the difference between a 0.5 carat to 1.5 carats with no problem. So I think that ever since we got that one, to be honest with you, we use it mainly as a tool, not so much as a selling feature, but so that's the bulk of that part. We have a few showcases where we do have live product that we make in store. About 80% of what we sell in the store is actually made here. So we try to complement a little bit. We have pieces in the cases that we have built with CounterSketch. CounterSketch lends itself beautiful to create collections because we can do minor changes to the same piece and it makes it look cohesive.
Yeah, definitely. One of my favorite parts inside of CounterSketch is definitely the curated collection. So you can, as you kind of spoke on, you can create a Erica Delgado style, right? And then you can alter it with little tweaks here and there. So that's definitely one of my favorite things about CounterSketch as well. So let's go down. So can you tell me, one or 2 or 3 things on how CounterSketch has, contributed to the success of your business?
Well, it allowed me to spend more time with the customer designing instead of in the bench trying to make modifications to then show them on a wax or show them on a sketch and then going back and incorporating that right now, one of the biggest features that we have is that we can incorporate changes as the customer is seeing the piece live on the screen. They can tell us, oh no, I don't like this, I want this, or I want the shank to be a little bit tapered, or I want it thinner at the bottom or thicker at the bottom. And we can do that. So it cut down significantly the time that we would spend between starting a project with the customer till the time that we said, okay, this is approved and ready to move on and let's go, before we might have to go through 3-4 changes, and that meant cutting different waxes or doing new renders. And now it's only a matter of minutes to do that. So that has been one of the biggest impacts, because it allowed me to then have more time to meet with more customers and come up with new designs for them. And so it has been significant on, that would say it's the life saving is the amount of time, especially because I am the only jeweler in the store, but I'm also the owner, so people want to talk to me. So my bench time is really precious right now. It's like I don't get to be in the bench as much as I want to be. So CounterSketch has still allowed me to be creative without worrying too much about, okay, I'm not being able to sit down and do all this and run the shop at the same time and everything else.
Yeah, and I think a lot of jewelers can kind of speak to that as well. You know, they wear many hats in the business, so that's great to kind of show them that CounterSketch can save you time, you know, with the customers as well. So, is there anything else?
Well, the other thing is that it allows you to make different variations on the same style. For example, if the customer tells you this is what they want, you could get them. I usually tell customers, okay, now that I know what you're looking for, give me a little bit and I'm going to come up with 3 different designs that kind of incorporates all the highlights of what you want and show them to you. And then you can tell me which one's your favorite and we move on with that one. Before, you know, I wouldn't have the time to do 3 waxes, different ones. So now it allows me to do a little bit different. And in the selling portion of that, you can incorporate different things to where you can make one of the styles where it has a little bit larger stone or a little bit more expensive, you know, because you have a little bit more metal, or do different things that shows them that you're not just taking into consideration their budget and what they like, but you're also letting them know that, hey, if you spend a little bit more, you might get this much nicer ring. But like I said, it's an easy change now. Before that would have been a whole endeavor. Now it's just, okay, let me just add this and show you what it looks like. And there you go.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that as well. It's always good to have options for your customer, you know.
But I'm going to tell you the biggest CounterSketch benefit was actually seen during this pandemic time. Because we were shut down, the city of Houston being such a large city, we were shut down for quite a while. And I was able to still work with my computer and doing the same thing we're doing right now via Zoom with customers. We make sure that we revamped our website at the beginning of the pandemic to make sure that we emphasize that we could do remote sessions, and we could, the same way that I'm going to share my screen later on with you guys to look at, it's what I did with my customers. So it allowed me to keep on working. We only had, in the end, only 2 weeks of downtime. And that's kind of because I was kind of adjusting to the period more than anything. But other than that, we were working constantly because we were still doing, you know, from my dining room table, I could do a consultation with a customer, incorporate the changes of what they wanted, and show them live from my living room or my dining room table to their dining room table as well. So the biggest benefit was really, it kind of took it into a whole new level, not just what we offer in store, but also allowed us to continue working during a hard time.
Yeah, and it also gives that personable experience to the customer, right? Kind of builds rapport. Yeah. And how does CounterSketch help you in your daily process?
Well, it allows us to, like I said, go through different versions of the same ring for customers. We get customers that are very visual. We get some other customers that they don't care. They just want us to make it and that's it. But with the ones that are a little bit more visual, or we need to explain a little bit more, it allows us to do different things to show them what we're working on and do different versions for them. But also it cuts down on my time, which allows me to do other things like we said earlier. But I would say that being able to show them these versions and stuff has been the biggest thing, but also having the Catton services behind my back doing some of the work for me has been a big thing. Being the only jeweler in the store, knowing that, I always tell my customers, let me send my file to my castings department, and they'll get back to me if there's anything that doesn't work, or they'll give me a more accurate weight of the wax, and we'll go from there for the quote. So being able to say I have a whole team behind me gives them the impression of a much bigger sized business and enterprise than what we really are. And it goes to credibility too. It's like I have my setters and I have my production team.
Yeah, that's
So
awesome.
that's kind of cool too.
We call that the stellar advantage, right? You can do everything in one location. You don't have to outsource multiple casting houses, stone house,
And to that, I don't mind it one little bit, because it frees up my time to do more designs, to sell more pieces, and have somebody else take care of the little stuff.
Yeah, a lot of our jewelers call it the easy button. You've seen that little red button. I forget what Staples commercial, I believe it is.
Yeah.
And they hit the easy button. So that's what a lot of our jewelers call it. Anyway, so do you think Countersketch kind of gives you a competitive advantage over the other jewelers in your area?
Yes, I do. Because of all the things we mentioned before, being in such a large city, we do have a lot of competition, and being able to offer something custom and unique makes us stand out from a lot of the box stores and a lot of the smaller stores that have kind of gotten stuck in time a little bit. So like I said, because we are now dealing, if you think about it, millennials are pretty much done getting engaged already. We have a few that are struggling behind. We're going past millennials, and being able to communicate in their same way they do and show them things the way they do, it's a tremendous advantage.
Yeah, and here's kind of a big one for, I guess, for a lot of customers. They're quite hesitant on learning the software because they feel like it's going to take them years to learn. Can you kind of speak on the smoothness of the learning curve, and maybe personally how long it kind of took you?
So when I got the software, there was not an available class to go do it in person, and so it was kind of like I bought it right. I made the decision, pulled the trigger right after they have had the last class. And mind you, this was back in 2016, so it was not as often as they do it now. So, and it was right after transitioning from GemVision being away to being now installer and all that stuff. So I have about, I'm going to say 6 weeks where there was no class available. I was already signed up for the first available class, but I didn't have anything. So I pretty much went and looked at every YouTube video you could find on Countersketch and started working on stuff, kind of playing with it. I'm going to say the best thing to do with Countersketch is really play with it and get to know the parts and the pieces and bend it until you can't bend it anymore. Bend it until it crashes. I tell my employees always, it's like, that's how you're going to learn, pushing it to the limit to what you can do with it. And so I kind of started building a little bit with those videos, but I had a customer that walked in a week before I was going to my class and had a very challenging project that he wanted me to do. So I tried to start putting it together. And then I went to the class, and obviously a live in-person class makes a big difference. If that's your way of learning, I do learn a little bit better that way, one-on-one person. I did later on have the online academy for some of my employees, and they did great with it as well. But on my style of learning, I do better if I'm there in person, seeing it, the energy of the room. It just kind of feeds and helps me understand better. So it was a little bit of a curve to learn, but I'm not going to say that it was super hard. If you do have a little bit basic knowledge of construction of jewelry, obviously that makes it even easier, because they have, GemVision has already put together a little cheat sheet that tells you, hey, this is what you're going to need. This is the minimum gap you need in between this and that, and for it to cast. And learning those little things make it a lot smoother to try to make a model and build a model. Like you said, I'm not the kind of person that is just going to open up a design and just change the color stone and change it into color metal, and that's it. I can do that directly on the Stellar website. I don't need Countersketch for that. I wanted to get more out of it. So about probably 95% of my projects are usually all in freehand, or with user parts where I start incorporating and saving things that I have worked on in the past. But like I said, the curve is not very steep if you have a little bit of knowledge of fabrication. If you don't, as long as you pay attention to those little details of, okay, I put it too far away, it's not touching, that's not going to cast together, you know, things like that. If you learn a little bit about those, you know, tricks that they tell us that they have in the fabrication standards, I guess they call it, you know, that helps a lot. You got frozen there for a second.
Yeah, definitely. And just to kind of speak on what you said. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, our Wi-Fi is somewhat iffy in this room. But just to kind of speak on what you said, we've seen a lot of success with those customers that are self-starters, the ones that actually go and do research on their own. You know, that they still come to a class. I definitely recommend the class to all of my customers. It's a fantastic experience to come here to Stellar, see all of the different things we offer. They'll actually put a gold bar in your hand. It's crazy how much it weighs, but the classes are great because they fully immerse the user in the software so they can actually learn. But before and after that, we definitely recommend customers to go out on their own and do their own research and kind of play with the software. Because we've seen customers that do that are generally the ones that have the most success with it. So,
and I try to every month catch the webinar that Heather does, where she has a great section, the Pinterest to price section in her webinars, which are absolutely great. Even if you don't have Countersketch yet, just go and watch one of them, because it makes it amazing how it makes you understand, because that's what we get. We get kids coming in with their phone in their hand saying, I want this ring that they sell on Pinterest. And knowing how to translate that to the screen, her webinars kind of help me put it together. It's like, oh yeah, I can totally do those. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, she does a good job. Heather's amazing. She's been with Gym Vision for some time now, but she does a fantastic job at kind of keeping it business centric. You know, I do webinars where I show how to use, use the software, but she does a good job kind of pivoting it towards the actual designer and the business, you know. So let's show some of your designs down here. I think I have quite a few of them. So some of these are absolutely gorgeous. These little point bands are really popular now.
And the funnest part is, as you can see, I made that one in 2018. I always put the year on my renders just so that I can keep track of what I have done through the years and what they look like, the changes on, you know, but yes, so that one I made it, and we have since then used those parts. I had to save it to reuse it because it has become super popular right now, so we can keep recycling that style.
Yeah, definitely like that one. And these kind of crossover, you know, shanks are super popular as well. So, all right, well, I think we will kind of get on to Erica sharing her screen. Let me go ahead and give you the controls. And if you want to pull Countersketch up and kind of walk us through a design.
Perfect. Let me share my screen.
Let me pass it over to you.
All right, so we are going to start with our Countersketch screen. I have it already pulled up. Let me close that. I was working on something earlier. Okay, so one of the things I like about Countersketch is that we can customize what this screen looks like to start with. So we did customize ours to the things that we want to push a little bit more. But one of the ones that we were able to do a couple of updates ago was this one here. You see, we have our logo incorporated, but that one, if we click it, it actually goes to our website. So if customers are looking at something and they tell me, oh, I saw it on your website, or, you know, it's something you worked on before, I can click here without having to go through the whole thing and, you know, show them a lot of the stuff, go back and forth with no problem. It pops it up. Some people, and I think at some point when we first started, we had it to where it will go to our showcase actually on Staller. So that way, if I wanted to go and check the price of the stone or check something, check the dimensions, a lot of times what I do is I always keep my screen with showcase at the same time open. So that way I can toggle back and forth, check sizes, because the fact that it is in CounterSketch doesn't mean that it might be something that Staller has it for me to source it sometimes. So sometimes because they want me to be able to use customer stones could come in any size. So I have the ability of use those in CounterSketch, but if I need it to be supplied, doesn't mean that I'm going to find it. So I need to always kind of double check and make sure that's available. So I do keep, I'm going to show you guys, see, it's actually and a different one right there. It's already there and ready to use so that I can show customers, you know, stones or diamonds or whatever we need to go and do. Okay. So that was one of the things that really make a difference on how we start with customers one-on-one. The first thing we do with customers is after we have identified on their prototypes what they like or what the style is, then we can come and kind of go through our search, or we can pull directly the style number that they like, you know, and go from there in the modifications. But like I said, a lot of what we do it on freehand. So we can show you that. I think that by now most of you guys have seen the basic demonstration, so I'm probably not going to show you how to look for a style unless you guys ask me for one. But so I'll show you a couple of things that we're working on right now. We have a customer that came over the weekend, and let me show you a picture. She brought us this picture, and she wants to.
I'm not seeing the picture, Erica.
Not seeing the picture? Okay, hold on, let me.
Maybe share the whole screen and
Yep,
not just the CounterSketch.
Let's do that. Let me go back to my controls. Let's do that, and I'm going to share again, okay? Show all windows. There we go. All right, let's try this again. Can you see now?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, perfect. Okay, so they came with this ring, which is a very popular Etsy ring right now, and they wanted to do it a little bit different. So we're like, okay, that's not something that it's available in our library, so how do we work it? And the original consultation was with one of my team girls here, and she went into the parts and pieces and found a shank. It's nice that it's all broken into different sections, so for easy access. She found a V-shaped shank, and she's like, great, I can do this in 2 minutes, you know? But she quickly realized that that shank didn't have an option to add little stones. So she was like, oh, this is a challenge. So it happened that the customer wanted to see 2 versions, one with stones, one without it. So she was able to show her the one with no stones, model it and show it to the customer, and then said, hey, we will send you later on via email a render with the one with stones along with a quote for you. So once she was done, I came in and I said, okay, let me work on that. So I'll show you what my process is. I'm going to close that so I can show you guys from the beginning. Hold on. There we go. First thing I always do when I'm working on a freehand part, I'm always going to put a ring rail, because it's going to save me time later on trying to figure out where to put things, where to place them, and put it on the sizing that I always need. You know, this happened to be a size 6 that we needed, so I already make that modification so that way I know where I'm standing and I can make adjustments based on that. It has saved me many times from submitting the wrong thing, the wrong size before. So then the next thing we know, we know for a fact that she wants a pear-shaped alexandrite. So I came to my gemstones and we can pull from there. And some people like to change above here the shape directly. A lot of times to save time, I just pull it directly and put it up in there, and it takes a minute to load. But then once we do, I find my shape that I want. And there's a couple of options that we can do on this. The ring rail, you see, is already coming in handy because it's going to allow me to place that stone where I need it to be first thing. And I gotta say, I probably work on the perspective view for the most part, but I do switch every so often. And if I want to see things being lined up, I do switch it to the through finger view, so that way I can kind of, have a little bit more idea of where things are fitting together and things like that. But for the most part, I like perspective view because it allows me to even go underneath and look at things, whether they're connected or not. I can spin it and do all sorts of things. And if you like to fidget, then that makes it really nice.
I use the perspective view in modeling as well, so.
Yeah. So once we do that, we pick the size that she wanted, per se. And the other thing that we do is we can change the style of our prongs. She does not like the V prong, even though I think the model she showed us did have it, but she didn't want that. So it was a quick, simple change here, take that out and, make the change. The next thing I do that I didn't do at the beginning that I should have done, it's set what my metal needs to be. She wants this to be rose gold. So a lot of times it helps you to just see it from the very beginning in the metal. I do tend to work a little bit on a two-tone effort per se, just so that I can see the connections better. If I'm working in all rose, even though the ring's going to be all rose in the end, if I'm working in all rose, I find that sometimes I might miss a little gap or something. But if I have a contrast in metals, it allows me to see it more clearly. But that's just, a preference. But it is a little trick that I learned through the time. I was like, why is it not connecting? Well, now I can see it better. So to me, this stone is a little too high for what she wants. So I can easily come in here and just change it a little bit and kind of go down. And I'm still not sticking through the bottom, so I'm happy with that. But that's going to change a little bit of how it fits. So I'm going to come in and do that. Now, the interesting part on this model that we did was how we came with the shank. And we wanted that V, but we wanted to have the diamonds. And I looked through my parts and I couldn't find one that would let me do that. We tried to change the curve on a contour band and that wouldn't happen. Ultimately, I think this is one of my favorite shanks right here because it is very versatile. It does have a lot of handles and a lot of changes you can make to it, and you kind of have to learn a little bit going back and forth. See, that looks nothing like the ring we need to make, but I know that I can move a little bit the overlap if I want to, but the main thing is I can also change where the profiles start. So what I did is I went back and took that profile, oops, wrong one, there we go. I took the profile position all the way down to the side. So I was left, per se, with a half ring, okay? And you see how my ring rail there is looking smaller? That's because I didn't do what I'm supposed to do and come over here and change it to the size that I need. So that's already first instance where that ring rail is saving me. There you go. We go back in there. So I have now the beginning of that V, but it's coming a little bit further. I can change that in a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I need the second portion of the V to be able to see how I'm doing there. So all I did was just mirror it like that. And now I'm having the V, and I'm going to start changing my overlap. And again, this was trial and error, coming up with this models and seeing how they change, how they look, playing with them until you find the correct combination. And I want that to change a little bit. You see, now we're starting to get more to the V shape that we want. And I'm probably going to leave it right there. It's going to overlap a little bit, but that's what I have CAM services for. They clean up that stuff for me. I don't lose time with that smaller stuff. So now I have this. This is my basic thing. it's still not having the stones, well, pick a bottom and we have it now. It's right there. Now I'm overlapping here, and if I don't want to overlap, see, we can do, actually this one looks pretty good. Sometimes you ended up having a weird overlap there, but you can move where the position, the starting position is, and it will help. So if we look back at our picture real quick, we need a second band coming there. So all I'm going to do right now is actually duplicate this same band that I'm doing because I want the geometry to kind of stay the same. And on my second band, I'm going to take the stones out and then just kind of play over here a little bit with my band. And I'm changing the shape, so I'm not wanting to do that as much. Okay, let's see my overlap. There we go. Now I'm moving it to all different places. And I think that what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the original and move that one a little bit further out. Oops, too much. See, so it's all playing with it until we get the right thing, really, on those. So this, it's a little bit, that's why my employer was like, okay, we will send you the other one later, because this will take a few more minutes. But still, I mean, right now, we're only 5 minutes into it, so we can definitely do that and be okay. Oops, the other direction. There we go. And then we can change the position of that as well a little bit, so that way we don't get it as much. All right, we changed the shape a little bit, but that's okay. We can just, let's change that one a little bit. Get it back. There we go. And now, there we go. And now we're where we need to be. And I'm a little short in here, so I can go back and kind of change that overlap a little bit, but I can start from there, making small changes to clean it up. For example, I'm still overlapping on these stones. So if I change the thickness, if I change the width of the profile, that's gonna help me make it so that we see a little bit more and we get it clear. Because it is a duplicate, I could also just move it a slight little bit if I wanted the bottom of the shank to be a little bit bigger. So we're now kind of pretty much basically where she wants, and then we can go ahead and add our band and things like that. We can change our stones. And let's say she wants something a little bit more interesting. There we go. And we can now start seeing what it looks like. Obviously, it takes a little bit more time to clean up, but not a whole lot. I will probably work on this model an additional 3-4 minutes and be done, you know, and render it for the customer. So that's a very simple way of putting something together, you know, using freehand. Sometimes we get a little bit more complex projects, like, let's see, the one that you guys saw on the opening. We went through different versions. The customer wanted something that looks slightly Art Deco, but that it also incorporated her stones. So we had to kind of play until we got what she liked, and she had different pictures from a website. And this one might take a little bit to load because it's a very visual intense.
A lot of freehand. Yeah. That's another thing customer, you know, prospective buyers of CounterSketch fail to kind of understand, is that a customer can bring you a handful of stones, you know, grandmama stones, that's what we call them.
Mm-hmm.
And you can put those custom stone sizes into CounterSketch. It doesn't have to be your typical 1.0s, 2.0s. It can be 2.25s. It can be 2.27s, you know, and you can put all of that into CounterSketch.
So this was one of the versions. Yeah, and she wanted to do, so when we started this project, she thought that she was inheriting a 2-carat diamond from her mom. And as we moved along with the project, it became very clear that she was not getting any diamonds from her mom because her sister intersected on that. So, but at this point, she had seen 2 different versions, 3 different versions. She really loved them and was committed. So the diamonds on the halo were from her original engagement ring, and she really was committed to have this ring made. And so at that point, we're like, okay, well, we have the options that we can use another regular, we can get a diamond for you. We could do a lab grown diamond if you want. And she ended up deciding that she wanted a regular mine diamond through time. I didn't want to scare her husband right now. So we actually put a moissanite on the center for her to get the project done. And this is not even the final version. This was just one of the renders we did for her. And this one had sapphires on the side. She wanted to make it different, make it, and you can see at the bottom here, all the different parts we used. A lot of times I consolidate them in the end, but this one we didn't because we were still working on it and ended up not being the final version that she wanted. So we moved on and didn't go back and clean up. But that's one of the advantages, that we were able to put a standard size stone. So that way later on in the future, we can go ahead and change that for her.
Yeah, Art Deco and kind of Edwardian dome rings are probably my favorite style. You know, the antique filigree with Art Deco sapphires. I love designing those types.
And so hopefully we won't crash on this one right now, because this one's very visual intense. We went from a little bit of visual to a lot visual. All those parts take time to kind of be populated. It's what I learned through the years. The more I push it to the limit, I have to be more patient with the software, you know, because I am really pushing it hard on this. But it allows me to still do it, and that's the great thing.
Yeah. What's unique about CounterSketch is even though you used all of these, and the reason why it uses so much resources is it populates what you created, yes, right? But it also populates all the possible changes behind the scenes. That way, whenever you do load it up, you can still change it, you know, and that's what, you know, takes the longest to load. And that just kind of speaks to the flexibility of CounterSketch, you know?
Yes. And you see this has a lot of little dots, little gumballs in here, and I can hide those. When I'm showing a customer, I normally hide those so that I can see a little bit more of a clean version and they can look at it. And on this one, I'm going to flip it on the bottom because on the drawing, you don't see the bottom that we did.
Love the inlay. That's amazing.
So and then these parts have been already, you see these little clips here, because we linked them all together. So that way, if I had to make any modifications, I could do it at once instead of having to move each individual piece. I could then go and move them all at one time, and that saved me time. Obviously, this was not a model that took me only a couple of minutes with the customer. This was something done pretty intense, but by then we were already into several of the designs that we needed to do. So, you know, we had to do this way just so that we didn't move things off and then lost track and have to start all over again. And sorry, I got somebody right there at the door for a minute, distracted me, and I was like, oh, lost track of what I was doing. Like, okay, just waving at me.
That's all right, it happens.
We are in a neighborhood where people walk around, and it's been the same neighbors for years. So they just walk by and wave at us. They've seen my daughter from being a baby all the way till now that she's 13. So they're, you know, more like family. So they're like, oh, Joe, I'm just waving, nothing. All right, so see this, we had to put all the mill grain. This was individual pieces of mill grain that we were able to replicate using polar array, one of the features that we have that made it a lot easier. So I only had to lay one out and then just, you know, mimic it on the other side, and then just do polar array to keep it matching everywhere. And so that's kind of time saving once you know how to use those. And that's one of the things that I would say the class was very helpful about. I learned how to put things here and where to pick styles from a lot of the videos I saw, but the class kind of showed you the basic tools, how to handle those, you know?
Yeah, there are little time-saving features inside of CounterSketch, and you kind of spoke on them, kind of the polar array, the mirrors,
Yeah.
all of those, even the groupings, right? The groupings save tremendous time as well.
And I can save these parts later on. Let's say I want to use the same halo style at a slanted edge and I want to use the same bottom part. I can save that grouping as a user part now. And next time I have to do it, I don't have to use it, you know, put it all together all over again. I can just pull it from the library again, already pre-made. So that's the good part. You know, it saves a lot of time. I'm going to try to show you guys a couple of different fun projects that I know that push the limit, so that if you need to ask me questions later, those are good to show.
Yeah, even while Erica finds this, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to shoot them our way.
This one was not on the PowerPoint, and so you're going to see it. We talked about it yesterday. So it was the fun project. This was actually my first CounterSketch piece ever.
That's awesome.
So it was a little bit more, a little bit different than the conventional, you know, first pieces that we do with this. But yes, so this was the one that kind of started all. We had to do a tennis racket pendant for a customer.
That's amazing.
And he actually brought me a picture of his wife's, he laid his wife's tennis racket on the floor and put a ball on top and took a picture from the top and said, okay, this is what I want. I want to recreate her racket with the ball in there. And he originally wanted me to put a yellow diamond in there, but I convinced him that, hey, if she ended up not loving this, I want her to have something she could use.
Yeah.
The parts and pieces to make something new later, you know, trying to balance what he wanted with what she might want or like later on. Total length of the piece is probably about, I'm going to say 1.5 inches. And so it was pretty interesting, you know, to put together. This is actually a pear halo that I used. This right here is, I think they're parts for rings. Yeah, to kind of make cathedral rings that I bend a little bit and change the shape so that we could do, and then just bezel sets on this side. And then we have the wires all in different piece of wires there to make the cord. He wanted those wires to be white, but we understood that trying to cast that into sections and try to put it together was going to be very hard. We will have to go with laser back and pretty much laser every single spot of that. So what we ended up doing was casting on one piece in yellow gold and rhodium plate the inside, the little wires. So in the end, they do look white now, but they are just rhodium plated instead.
Yeah, I was about to say stuff like that. You kind of touched on it earlier on, but the production standards, I was actually, well, me and another person actually wrote those production standards in CAM services. So it's good to hear that you get use out of them.
I do. And, you know, I had to make sure we had 0.5 millimeter there, or otherwise it wouldn't cast, you know.
That's true. Yeah, that's phenomenal. Yeah, you had told me a little bit about it, but I love, you know, the whole design concept, how it lays, you know, sideways. Most people would probably do it from the top, just have a dangle, but I like how it's sideways. I like the rubies and the diamonds. That's impressive, Erica. I love it.
Thank you. And then one of the things that I think nobody mentions, we do a lot of men projects as well with CounterSketch. We have a few different wedding bands, couples that wanted wedding bands that were unique or were different. And we have been able through the years to do those because of the fact that we did have CounterSketch. And I'm looking to see if I can put, okay, this ones were in platinum. Let's see, that one might be a little bit more clear here. And so it's pretty cool to see how guys like it as well. Although I have to say, when we go to render, I'll show you a little bit, guys, what I do for render, since my renders look a little different than what most people do. But a hand for a man does look a little odd in the renders, but for the most part, it still looks. So this couple wanted to have a compass on the ring, and they wanted a constellation, and they actually map it out and gave me the map of the constellation they wanted, that it had a significance to them.
Is that Orion?
I think, well, yeah, I think it's Orion, now that you mentioned. And so it had to have specific placing, it had to have, you know, everything done in a certain way, and they wanted it in platinum. And so I was like, well, I'm not going to cast platinum in house, so the only way to do this will be to do it with CounterSketch and have you guys do it for me.
Easy button.
And to make it easier, they wanted a his and hers. So we had to do two of them, one much smaller than the other, you know, and those bumps need to be big enough that you could see them, but not too big that they took too much of the band. And they also needed to be enough to withstand the time, because platinum tends to kind of mush with time into one piece. So we wanted to make sure that it did last them long enough. So it was a little bit challenging, but it worked. They loved it in the end. As you guys,
I love that kind of uniqueness, you know, especially whenever a couple comes in with a story, you know,
yeah,
you try and give them the best, and that's amazing design too.
and as you guys see, I label my portfolios with the name of the customer, so it allows me to go back and look at it easier. We do keep two portfolios where we just have generic, like one in-house portfolio, and my employees have a portfolio of them. So when they're practicing or coming up with designs themselves, they put it on that folder. But otherwise, it kind of has the names of the customers in it. This couple right here, they also wanted matching bands, but they want them to be slightly different. And the triangle had a significance for them. And those diamonds belong to her mother's engagement ring. So they wanted to make sure they incorporated those. Her mother had passed away, and she wanted a way of having her mom in her ring as well. So we incorporated diamonds, and this ones were flush set, and this ones were bezel set on his. So it gives you a little bit of variety to do. Again, that's the flexibility of coming up with the same style, just with a few changes. Fairly easy.
Yeah.
This lady
Definitely.
here had a bunch of, because we do pendants too, not just rings with CounterSketch. We do earrings as well. We have done in the past. It's more flexible. If you look through the library, yes, rings are the vast majority of the library items, but because we do have freehand, we're able to make pretty much anything else. This might take a couple of minutes to load up. Again, she came up with a bunch of different diamonds from different, you know, people in the family.
Yep, happens quite often here. So if you do want to, you said you may want to touch on rendering. So we are almost out of time here, but
Perfect.
You can showcase this one. In the meantime, if you guys want to check out Erica on any of her social medias, I'm gonna give a shameless plug to her because she's quite amazing. You can find her, all of her social media handles are at EDJD Houston. So go ahead and give her a follow on Instagram.
We appreciate that.
Yeah, I actually went and looked at some of your stuff last night. So
let's see, I'm trying to pull my screen. It kind of went black for a minute, so let's see what's going on with that. There we go. So one of the things we do when we render things is, let's actually pull a ring and be easier because, what is this doing now? People like to see things in different angles, but I find that when we show them, let's see, let's just do this. This is a simple ring, so we can do that one just as an example, so it won't take long to load. You don't want to send an email to a customer with like 10 images, because it becomes sometimes, it becomes really big files and they don't see them as often. So we found that we can consolidate our renders into one file using very quick. I'm not a Photoshop pro or anything like that, but I just know enough that I could add my logo. I wanted to make sure that all our renders had a logo in it. Just goes to branding and, kind of best practices, because it does happen that we have customers that are, sometimes they're like, bring one thing to us, one bring to another jeweler to see which one does better. And so we do have a kind of a nice community here in Houston. We know most of each other. We do have breakfast once a month with all the jewelers in the area. So this kind of hints them like, hey, this ring was made by Eric already, so I'm not, so it's nice to be able to have our logo there, So the kind of things that I do for that, we consolidate all the renders into one picture. And I'll show you an example here where we put a top view, a side view, a through finger, and then what it looks like in the hand. Because if this is a remote consultation and they're not getting to try on themselves, this kind of gives them an idea of scale. And again, this is what I was talking about. The men's hands are not the best example of things, but they're pretty useful, that you can see. I always tell them, pay attention at the top knuckles, how does it fit in the hand, and it will give you an idea. And so they really appreciate that they have all the views in one area. Another way that we render, we have a customer that wanted the same variations of the same ring, white gold versus rose gold versus with a band or not band. So we can put them side by side and show them all the different styles of the same kind of ring. And so what we do is, and I have to say I'm a little spoiled with this rendering tool. I recently started trying to work a little bit on Metrix Gold, and I find myself saving things and opening them in CounterSketch to render them, which I know that the guys will kill me if they heard that that's what I do, because the render in Metrix Gold is pretty good too, but I'm just spoiled by it.
Yeah, so there's kind of two differences. Matrix Gold, it takes a little bit more, I don't want to say know-how, but more in-depth and more, I guess, understanding to know what to change, how to get reflections. It's more in-depth, if you will.
And this is time, this is time saver all the time. So what I normally do is, when we have the model that the customer agrees, I normally put it on the perspective setting, and I kind of turn it a little bit at an angle to kind of try to highlight a little bit of the features, or have a view where they can see most of it. Sometimes I do it if I know that their emphasis is all about the center stone, the one bigger center stone, then I'm gonna put it at an angle that's the highlight. And then right here, we have a couple of different options for rendering. I always render at full resolution, the best resolution ever, because depends on how they're opening this, it's gonna make a difference. And because I'm gonna do some editing, I wanna have the best resolution I can. Through the years, we changed. We used to do a black reflective background, because you have different options of backgrounds to match your colors. We ended up settling on doing most everything on the white reflective nowadays, because it's a little bit more clean, easier to use. So then you have props that you can use. And then you have the lighting. We love the studio lighting. And then we have a couple of options here to where you can save the file, or how to render things separate without background. So we normally click on this and have it always checked, because we use that quite a bit. So my first render, I do a total of 5 renders total, I'm gonna say, from each piece. And then I combine them into one picture. So the first render we do takes a couple of minutes to kind of pull all those pixels together and get in there. The first render, I always save it as a JPEG version. So that way, yep, and it's opening other stuff behind now for some reason. Let's see, there it is. We always save that one as a JPEG as being my center, because it's gonna have the background ready for me. Okay. And as you see, it looks really more realistic than it did while open on CounterSketch. So I like that. Customers love that. They're like, oh, it looks like it's already finished and made. And really, this is what brings to life whatever you're making for them. And so then we go ahead, and after that one's done and saved, and I saved all of mine to, I use OneDrive. I use a cloud-based storage just because it helps me keep everything, and I can open it from any computer or any device. So I love doing that. Then I go ahead and do a top view, but what I do is I scale it down a couple of times so that way it helps me. And then I'm going to render that. And I'm going to render that and save it as the PNG, which will be a transparency. It has no background. So then I don't have to have a lot of knowledge of any other editing software to cut out the backgrounds. It's already cut out for me. You guys did that job for me already. So then all I got to do is just copy paste it onto my original image, my original one that I saved. And I go back and do the same with all of the other views. And then the last one we normally do is we put a hand on it and change that to perspective. So that way we can kind of always try to think as the girl, how do we look at rings? And, if you get a ring in, the first thing you do is you stick your hand in front of you and go, oh my God, and look at it, So I usually try to render the hand in that position just because to me it's more natural. And so, again, this one is saved as a transparency so we can put them all together. It's something that is not very hard. And if anybody has any questions about that and they want to just send me a private message on social media, I can really teach you in 2 minutes how to put it together. It's super easy.
Yeah, that's awesome that you do that. We have a couple, but a lot of users don't understand like the alpha channels and PNG. So that's great that you do the transparent background and you put them all on top of each other. That's quite impressive. I was looking at some of your like designs, and I was like, man, she does a fantastic job kind of showcasing and rendering. So
like I said, it's a lot easier to grab their attention if it's all in one image. They
yeah.
don't have to take it off and open another picture and open another picture. They open one and they have all the views in one. So it makes a big difference for them to make the final decision. I find that out. It's all about that. It's all about catching their attention as much as we can, as fast as we can, so they can make their decision on what they want to move forward with. So it simplifies that.
Well, if you have anything else you want to show them.
Well, I think that, if they have any questions, I think we can do that if you want first. If not, we do have, I've been doing this for so many years. There's a lot of renders I could show them, but.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we have about an hour. They haven't asked many questions. I did encourage them, but they seem to be a bit quiet, but I'm sure they loved everything you showed them. I know I did for sure, but I did give them your social media handle. So if you guys want to go like, sub and follow, I'm sure Erica would appreciate that. And yeah, like she said, if you have any questions, just DM her. And that's great that you offered that, because a lot of jewelers are kind of, I don't want to say secretive, but they don't want to kind of share with their competition or stuff. So that's kind of a breath of fresh air.
Well, I'm being a first generation in the business. I really had to rely on other people helping me out and teaching me things. And so, I love to be able to do it with other people, share them, tell them. And, ultimately, it makes all our lives easier. It's all about the balance we get with life. And this has made a significant difference in the amount of time that I have to spend in the studio, because now I can even work from home. I don't have the luxury of having 2 studios. So that helps me a lot.
Yeah, I bet. Well, guys, that'll do it for us. Erica, I want to, on behalf of everyone and here at Gem Vision, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out to come and show us a few things. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I know it's going to go on YouTube, and people there are going to enjoy it as well. I'm sure the audience here got a kick out of it as well. But we definitely appreciate it for your time.
Well, thank you for spending time with me this morning. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and guys, that'll do it for us. If you have any questions, please reach out to us at Gym Vision. You can reach out to info@gymvision.com, or you can give us a shout via phone 800-357-6272. So that'll do it from my side. Erica, again, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. We will be back here in 2 weeks, following Tuesday. So not next Tuesday, but the following at 11. And yep, I hope you all have a great day. Erica, thanks. We'll see
Thank you
y'all.
very much.